อีกประมาณ2 ชั่วโมงค่ะขอกราบเรียนเชิญนะคะแขกผู้มีเกียรติที่อยู่บริเวณโซนด้านหลังห้องนะคะช่วยขยับขึ้นมาบริเวณครึ่งห้องด้านหน้าด้วยนะคะเผื่อที่ด้านหลังอาจจะมีการดับไฟสักเล็กน้อยด้วยนะคะเทสค่ะ1 2 3 4เทสขอบพระคุณนะคะสำหรับแขกผู้มีเกียรติที่ช่วยขยับโต๊ะเข้ามาด้านหน้านะคะขอบพระคุณเป็นอย่างสูงค่ะสวัสดีค่ะท่านแขกผู้มีเกียรตินะคะและผู้เข้าร่วมประชุมทุกท่านค่ะขอนำทุกท่านนะคะกลับเข้าสู่การประชุมสร้างความรู้ความเข้าใจเกี่ยวกับการจัดทำและการใช้ประโยชน์จากบัญชีประชาชาติด้านการท่องเที่ยวและตารางปัจจัยการผลิตและผลผลิตด้านการท่องเที่ยวในภาคบ่ายนี้ค่ะนะคะในภาคบ่ายนี้ค่ะจะเป็นการบรรยายพิเศษค่ะเรื่อง TSA Value for Policy During COVID-19 Pandemic ค่ะซึ่งเราได้รับเกียรตินะคะจากท่านดร.ปีเตอร์ไลเมอร์นะคะท่านให้การบรรยายพิเศษกับพวกเราในบ่ายวันนี้ค่ะโดยที่ท่านปัจจุบันนะคะท่านดำรงตำแหน่งเป็นรองผู้อำนวยการสำนักงานสถิติแห่งชาตินะคะประเทศออสเตรียค่ะท่านมีความเชี่ยวชาญทางด้านของสถิติการท่องเที่ยวทางด้านของบัญชีประชาชาติด้านการท่องเที่ยวนะคะรวมถึงท่านยังเป็นอาจารย์สอนให้กับมหาวิทยาลัยต่างๆทั้งภาครัฐและก็ภาคเอกชนในประเทศออสเตรียนะคะทางด้านของการบริหารจัดการการท่องเที่ยวค่ะและทางด้านสถิติการท่องเที่ยวด้วยนะคะในภาคบ่ายนี้ค่ะเราได้รับเกียรตินะคะจากท่านผู้ดำเนินรายการการบรรยายพิเศษนี้นะคะ2 ท่านค่ะท่านแรกคือคุณณัฐพลลีลาวัฒนานันท์นะคะท่านกรรมการผู้จัดการบริษัท Business Excellent Business Management จำกัดนะคะรวมถึงคุณพักทองส้มค่ะในลำดับนี้ขออนุญาตส่งมอบเวทีการบรรยายพิเศษนะคะให้กับคุณณัฐพลลีลาวัฒนานันท์ขอกราบเรียนเชิญค่ะ
สวัสดีครับก่อนที่ท่านจะได้รับฟังบรรยายนะครับของดร.ปีเตอร์ไรเมอร์นะครับผมขออนุญาตเท้าความเกี่ยวกับเรื่องของการจัดทำ TSA นะครับก็ต้องกลับมาที่ภารกิจสำคัญอันหนึ่งของกระทรวงการท่องเที่ยวและกีฬาก็คือการทำข้อมูลด้านการท่องเที่ยวนะครับซึ่งผมคิดว่าทุกท่านที่อยู่ในที่นี้ก็คงคุ้นเคยกับเรื่องของข้อมูลด้านการท่องเที่ยวนะครับซึ่งจะแบ่งเป็น2 ส่วนหลักๆก็คือเรื่องสถิติท่องเที่ยวนะครับก็มีสถิติท่องเที่ยวระหว่างประเทศก็คือต่างชาติมาเที่ยวไทยคนไทยเที่ยวต่างประเทศนะครับแล้วก็สถิติท่องเที่ยวภายในประเทศก็คือนักท่องเที่ยวทั้งคนไทยและต่างชาติที่เดินทางเข้าไปท่องเที่ยวในแต่ละจังหวัดนะครับรวมถึงอัตราการค้าพักแรมของนักท่องเที่ยวนะครับในสถานพักแรมทุกประเภททั่วประเทศนะครับอันนี้ก็จะเป็นภารกิจหลักๆที่ผมคิดว่าหน่วยงานต่างๆส่วนใหญ่ก็คงจะได้ มีการใช้ข้อมูลนะครับกับอีกส่วนหนึ่งนะครับก็คือตัวบัญชีประชาชาติด้านการท่องเที่ยวนะครับซึ่งท่านอาจจะสงสัยว่า2ส่วนนี้ต่างกันอย่างไรนะครับส่วนที่เป็นสถิติท่องเที่ยวเนี่ยก็จะเป็นอาจจะเป็นตัวชี้วัดที่สะท้อนในเรื่องของรายได้จำนวนนักท่องเที่ยวนะครับค่าใช้จ่ายต่อคนต่อวันต่อทริปค่าใช้จ่ายในแต่ละประเภทของการใช้จ่ายของนักท่องเที่ยวจำนวนวันพักจัตราการเข้าพักแรมนะครับเรารวมถึงพฤติกรรมนักท่องเที่ยวนะครับเป็นต้นนะครับอันนี้จะเป็นข้อมูลที่เป็นประโยชน์สำหรับทั้งหน่วยงานภาครัฐและเอกชนไปวางแผนนะครับไปวางแผนเรื่องการตลาดเรื่องดูการกระจายตัวของนักท่องเที่ยวเรื่องทำยังไงกระตุ้นให้คนพักยาวขึ้นทำยังไงให้คนใช้จ่ายมากขึ้นนะครับนักท่องเที่ยวชอบอะไรไม่ชอบอะไรก็จะไปวางแผนได้นะครับแต่พอถามลึกลงไปว่าแล้วท่องเที่ยวเนี่ยเป็นกี่เปอร์เซ็นต์ของ GDP นะครับท่องเที่ยวมี contribute ให้กับเศรษฐกิจของประเทศเท่าไหร่นะครับท่องเที่ยวก่อให้เกิดผลกระทบต่อสาขาต่างๆอย่างไรเนี่ยสถิติท่องเที่ยวจะบอกไปไม่ลึกละลงไปไม่ถึงเพราะฉะนั้นเรื่องของบัญชีประชาชาติด้านการท่องเที่ยวก็จะเป็นตัวที่ทำให้เราวิเคราะห์ลึกลงไปนะเราจะรู้ว่า GDP ด้านการท่องเที่ยวเนี่ยประมาณกี่เปอร์เซ็นต์ของ GDP ของประเทศนะครับเรารู้ GDP ท่องเที่ยวสร้างมูลค่าเพิ่มเท่าไหร่เรารู้ว่าท่องเที่ยวแต่ละสาขาเนี่ยสร้าง GDP ให้กับประเทศเท่าไหร่นะครับเราเห็นถึงความสำคัญของการท่องเที่ยวมากขึ้นนะครับเราอยากจะเปรียบเทียบขนาดเศรษฐกิจด้านการท่องเที่ยวของประเทศไทยกับต่างประเทศส่วนใหญ่ก็จะใช้ในเรื่องของตัว GDP ด้านการท่องเที่ยวในการวัดนะครับในขนาดเดียวกันเนี่ยในบัญชีประชาชาติด้านการท่องเที่ยวมีการทำตาราง I/O นะครับหรือ Input Output Table ซึ่งเป็นตารางที่เป็นโมเดลอันหนึ่งที่สะท้อนถึงโครงสร้างเศรษฐกิจนะครับเพราะฉะนั้นจากตารางตัวนี้สามารถรู้ว่านักท่องเที่ยวเข้ามาปีหนึ่งเราได้รายได้3 ล้านบาทมันก่อให้เกิดกระทบแต่ละสาขาเท่าไหร่ถ้ารัฐบาลทำโครงการคนละครึ่งโครงการเที่ยวด้วยกันหรือโครงการอะไรต่างๆเนี่ยจะก่อให้เกิดผลกระทบGDP เท่าไหร่จะก่อให้เกิดผลกระทบสาขาใดเท่าไหร่นะครับสามารถที่จะวิเคราะห์ลงไปลึกได้นะครับแล้วทางกระทรวงเองปัจจุบันก็ทำลงไปลึกถึงใน GDP TSA ในระดับเขตพัฒนาการท่องเที่ยวนะครับแล้วตาราง I/O ของประเทศก็ทำตาราง I/O ในระดับประเทศลงตาราง I/O ในระดับภาคแล้วตาราง I/O ในเขตพัฒนาการท่องเที่ยวซึ่งปีนี้น่าจะได้ครบทุกเขตพัฒนาการท่องเที่ยวมันลงลึกไปนะครับแล้วก็GDP ด้านการท่องเที่ยวหรือ TSA ก็ไม่ใช่เฉพาะมีภาพรวมอย่างเดียวก็ยังมีในภาพในระดับของรายไตรมาสอีกนะครับซึ่งข้อมูลต่างๆเหล่านี้มีเยอะมากแล้วถือว่าการทำบัญชีประชาชาติของประเทศไทยเนี่ยในเวทีโลกเนี่ยค่อนข้างที่จะก้าวหน้านะครับจนกระทั่งกระทรวงได้รับการยอมรับจาก UN นะครับเชิญทางกระทรวงเข้าไปเป็น Expert Group ในคณะทำงานพัฒนาระบบบัญชีประชาชาติของ UNWTO นะครับแล้วก็น่าจะเป็นประเทศเดียวในอาเซียนนะครับอันนี้ก็เป็นความภาคภูมิใจของคนไทยทุกคนนะครับที่เราสามารถทำระบบข้อมูลระบบสถิติจนกระทั่งเป็นที่ยอมรับในระดับสากลนะครับกระทรวงพยายามที่จะให้ทุกๆหน่วยงานได้มีความรู้ความเข้าใจเกี่ยวกับเรื่องระบบบัญชีประชาชาติเพราะบางทีมันอาจจะวิชาการนิดนึงอาจจะทำให้เราเข้าใจยากนิดหนึ่งเพราะฉะนั้นก็พยายามที่จะจัดเวทีต่างๆนะครับแต่ในขนาดเดียวทั้งในกรุงเทพและก็ต่างจังหวัดนะครับก็ทำมาอย่างต่อเนื่องหลายปีในขนาดเดียวกันนะครับเราก็ไม่ได้ทิ้งในเชิงวิชาการนะครับเราก็ได้มีการกระทรวงได้มีการเข้าประชุมในเวทีต่างๆนะครับที่เกี่ยวข้องกับการทำพวกสถิติท่องเที่ยวบัญชีประชาชาติด้านการท่องเที่ยวในเกือบทุกเวทีที่เป็นเวทีสากลแล้วก็มีการประสานงานกับผู้เชี่ยวชาญด้านการจัดทำบัญชีประชาชาติด้านสถิติท่องเที่ยวในระดับนานาชาตินะครับอย่างท่านดร.ปีเตอร์ไรเมอร์เนี่ยท่านเป็นผู้เชี่ยวชาญ นะครับในเรื่องของการทำสถิติท่องเที่ยวแล้วก็บัญชีประชาด้านการท่องเที่ยวเป็นระดับเรียกว่าต้นๆของโลกนะครับซึ่งทางกระทรวงเคยเชิญมารอบหนึ่งแล้วนะครับแต่รอบนี้ท่านเดินทางมาไม่ได้เนื่องจากว่าเกิดการระบาดของโควิดนะครับท่านจะบรรยายจากทางประเทศออสเตรียนะครับไม่ใช่ออสเตรเลียนะออสเตรียที่ยุโรปนะครับแต่ว่าเพื่ออำนวยความสะดวกให้กับทุกท่านนะครับก็ท่านบรรยายไว้ล่วงหน้านะครับแล้วก็เราทำซับไตเติลเป็นภาษาไทยเพื่อความเข้าใจที่สะดวกขึ้นแต่ตัวเป็นท่านมาด้วยนะครับหลังจากที่ฟังบรรยายของท่านเสร็จแล้วนะครับตัวเป็นท่านอยู่เพราะฉะนั้นเราสามารถที่จะซักถามแลกเปลี่ยนความคิดเห็นข้อมูลต่างๆอัปเดตสถานการณ์ที่ยุโรปการเอาTSA ไปใช้ในการพัฒนานโยบายต่างๆของทางยุโรปเขาทำยังไงนะครับก็เดี๋ยวฝากทุกท่านนะครับช่วยกันแลกเปลี่ยนความคิดเห็นนะครับเพื่อให้เราได้ข้อมูลได้องค์ความรู้ได้อัปเดตสถานการณ์ที่เป็นประโยชน์มากที่สุดนะครับก็ขอบคุณทุกท่านครับแล้วก็เดี๋ยวเราฟังตัว VTR เชิญครับ
Okay, so good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and it's very much a pleasure to be with you in this conference concerning formation and utilization of tourism satellite accounts and tourism input output table. It's very much a pleasure to be in this meeting. I'm not here at Bangkok. I would like to be as it was in July 2018, but due to COVID-19, in the moment it's not possible. But I'm looking forward to be there in presence in the near future. My name is Peter Leimer, and I'm since 1993. I'm working for Statistics Austria. And I'm mainly concerned with tourism statistics. Okay, so good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and it's very much a pleasure to be with you in this conference concerning formation and utilization of tourism satellite accounts and tourism input output table. It's very much a pleasure to be in this meeting. I'm not here at Bangkok. I would like to be as it was in July 2018, but due to COVID-19, in the moment it's not possible. But I'm looking forward to be there in presence in the near future. My name is Peter Leimer, and I'm since 1993. I'm working for Statistics Austria, and I'm mainly concerned with tourism statistics since nearly 30 years. And I was involved in many international projects in my life, in my business life, in regards to tourism statistics and tourism satellite accounting. In addition, I'm teaching and giving university courses and related to tourism management and tourism statistics. My presentation will mainly deal with tourism satellite accounts and the policy's value during the COVID-19 pandemic. First of all, I would like to introduce a little bit what is TSA. The next step would be, or the next part would be, the COVID-19 pandemic, the impacts on tourism, which I would like to present based on UNWTO data. In the third part, I would like to present TSA and its use for tourism policy concerning and in regards to the COVID-19 pandemic. And in addition, and afterwards, some words concerning the impacts on tourism in Austria in regards to COVID-19, and finally, some conclusions. So first of all, about what do we speak? TSA, what is this? So the tourism satellite account. in fact, we have satellite accounting not only for tourism, but we have satellite accounting also for other fields in statistics like agriculture, environment, health. And in fact, satellite accounting is the extension of the system of national accounts, which makes possible to understand the size and the role of an activity which is usually hidden somewhere in the accounts as tourism is doing. Satellite accounts in general provide additional information of a functional and cross-sectoral nature, like, as I mentioned, environment, agriculture, tourism. The next is the possibility of using the complementary and alternative concepts, including the use of classifications and accounting frameworks, for example, tourism satellite account. Satellite accounting in general makes possible further analysis of specific data by means of relevant indicators and aggregates. And with satellite accounting, there is also a possibility to link between physical data sources and monetary accounting systems. Now coming to the satellite account for tourism, satellite accounting for tourism is also mentioned in the SNA, in the System of National Account 2008, and also in the European System of Account 2010. And the analysis for tourism is important, and the role of the tourism in the national account, in the national economy is important, since in SNA and also in the ESA, they do not distinguish between a shoe is purchased by visitor or by a resident. And for this, to find out more about these expenses and about this tourism consumption, tourism satellite account was developed. So tourism satellite account integrates, and this is, I think, the key issue of satellite accounting, integrates supply side and demand side information. TSA links tourism statistics with macroeconomic analysis. TSA highlights also the link between domestic, which is an important part of tourism, inbound and outbound, at least the domestic part of tourism, and the balance of payments. So there is also conceptually, there are differences between balance of payments and tourism statistics, but in fact, there is a link between both systems. And it highlights and shows also the respective commodities produced by tourism suppliers and purchased by visitors, and these are included in the core accounts and in the core tables of tourism satellite accounting. So we have important statistical and conceptual determinants are defined in UNWTO in the frameworks like in the International Recommendations on Tourism Statistics 2008, but also in the TSA in the Recommended Methodological Framework 2008. So these are the methodological guidelines, the concepts. The concepts does not say much about how to compile TSA or tourism statistics, but it states and in there the most important definitions are taken into account in these frameworks. So we have in relation to TSA, we have 10 TSA standard tables. We have table 1 to 4, which concerns tourism demand. We have 5 and 6, which is concerning tourism industries, so the supply side. We have a very important table 7 concerning employment in tourism industries. We have table 8 concerning tourism fixed capital formation, so the investment in tourism. We have also the consumption of the government and taking into account in TSA table 9 concerning tourism collective consumption. And we have also, as I mentioned before, the linkage between monetary data and physical flows, and this is done in TSA or shown in TSA table 10. Here in this slide, there is an overview concerning the TSA or the TSA standard table. It summarizes again what I have already said. So we have demand-related tables, so the consumption account. We have the supply-related tables 5 and 6 in regards to the production account. We have employment. We have also, these are the main, let's say the main tables. So 1, 2, and 4, 5, 6, and 7. And then we have, of course, additional important tables. This concerns the outgoing tourism in table 3. And then we have also in table 8 and 9, as I mentioned, investment and government's tourism collective consumption, and linking physical and monetary indicators. We have TSA table 10. So what is important in regards to TSA is also the international comparability, of course, of the results. And this requires an international agreed set of products and activities and industries. So here this slides show the characteristic products. We have internationally comparable tourism characteristics products like accommodation, food and beverage, railway, road, water, and so on. And we have also country-specific tourism characteristic products like goods and services. And this is up to the countries to take into account this kind of country-specific tourism characteristic products. So if there is a tourism-related product of high value, then this can be shown and taken into account also in the TSA framework. We have other consumption products, so tourism connected and non-tourism related products. So this is the whole, let's say, retail sector. And then we have another variable, and this is concerning valuables. On the other side, we have the same, or rather the same, classification in regard to activities and industries. So we have the accommodation, railway, and transport, so all the passenger transport sector, of course, cultural activities, sports and recreational activities. And again, here we have also the country-specific activities, which concerns retail trade, as I mentioned before, and other country-specific tourism characteristic activities. So normally to compile the TSA, there are a lot of partners involved, and these partners involved concern also partners within a national statistical office or within the ministry. And then we have also additional partners outside, so external partners, like, for example, and this is mentioned here, the central bank, National Tourism Administration, for example, research institutes, and other partners. And here of this block, the last slide shows a little bit what are the limitations of TSA. So fast available and short-term data in order to identify monthly and seasonal changes are not available so far. Also, detailed results are not available since we have a list of products, and this list of products is determined by international recommendations. There is also a possibility to show more about more data about additional products, but this depends on the availability of data. The impact of special events and shocks cannot be currently analyzed and nowcasted, like environmental disasters, terror attacks, and so on. And also based on TSA data on market level are not available. So this means doing a kind of TSA in particular, or a particular analysis on the most important tourism generating markets. So this is not possible, but this nevertheless does not mean that these issues might be solved through additional research and investigations, of course. Coming to the COVID-19 pandemic impacts on tourism, let's say on a worldwide level. You see here, and this is based on UNWTO survey concerning travel restrictions, and as it is in November 2021. So you see the dark blue areas. So these are areas which are still closed, so where the borders are still closed. Then we have the lighter blue, the partial closure of borders, and still you see that a lot of areas in the world are still closed, of course. And we have some areas and countries with testing and quarantine formalities, and this is also a lot of parts, like in Africa, for example, South America, but also in Canada. In these areas, this is still valid for these countries. Here you see a table or a slide and a graph concerning the evolution of global travel restrictions between April 2020 and November 2021. And you see that the peak of completed border closure was observed in May 2020. If you have the global, if you look to the global evolution, and then I'm presenting also the evolution on travel restrictions in the Asia and the Pacific area. So this was, the peak was here concerning the closure in April 2020 and in June 2021. So compared to the global figures, the share of still closed countries seems to be higher than in the rest of the world in this area, in the area of Asia and the Pacific. Concerning international tourism arrivals in 2020, you see in 2019, we had still 1.5 billion international tourist arrivals. In 2020, it was a minus of 74% to 381 million international tourism arrivals. There was also a minus in regards to the, apart from the international arrivals, also in the international tourism receipts, a minus of 1.3 trillion US dollar. There was also a loss in global GDP, and mentioned also here in these slides, of 2 trillion US dollars. So this shows also the huge contribution of tourism on a worldwide level to the worldwide economy. Here and in the following, there are some figures or some showing the decrease of the international tourism arrivals by month. In here, this is concerning 2020, and you see the peak was here on a worldwide level with minus 97, so nearly 100% less international arrivals in April 2020. And the latest figures available concerning the year 2021, still there is a lot of problems, of course, in regards to the COVID pandemic. And you see the peak here on a worldwide level in regards to a decrease of international tourism arrivals was February 2021 with a minus of 88%. Looking ahead, there are some forecasts available, but always, of course, taking into account the developments concerning COVID, of course, and the present situation of the COVID-19 pandemic. And you see here that according to the estimates of UNWTO, the level of 2019 with 1.5 billion international arrivals will reach not before 2024. But as I said before, always taking into account the present developments and situations concerning COVID-19, which might change quite quickly, as we have learned during the last 2 years. Coming now to the TSA and its use for tourism policy. So for measuring and monitoring solid data, instruments are needed. As we have seen in the previous slides of UNWTO concerning the impacts of COVID-19. So, however, on a worldwide level, we have data on international arrivals, but which does not say anything about the economic impact, in particular, the effects and the impacts on tourism-related industries like the transport sector, like the cultural sector, like the restaurant sector and the gastronomy sector, for example. So in this regard, TSA has a lot of advantages for decision makers in the tourism policy, and doing the respective measures and decisions in order, of course, and this is one of the objectives in the next future, in order to rebuild and recover tourism. So TSA, for whom and what for? So TSA is very important, of course, for the tourism policy and for the policy in total, I would say. So TSA is improving the visibility of the economic value of the tourism industry, and tourism industry in this respect concerns not only the hotel sector, but it is including also the transport sector, the cultural sector, the travel agency sector, for example. On the other side, we have TSA is important also for tourism statistics and statistics in general, I would say. To have more reliable and coherent tourism and travel statistics system and a kind of integrated system. So TSA makes it also possible to do some reconciliation work between tourism demand side and tourism supply side. So to say more about the quality of tourism statistics in general. So from TSA results, tourism policy can accept powerful monetary indicators. So to give a picture of how successful tourism in total, in overall, is for the economy, the prerequisites are that the development of TSA is in close cooperation with research and stakeholders. I think also the organization of collaboration and working groups related to tourism statistics is quite useful to have an exchange of ideas, exchange of knowledge and data between the various stakeholders. I think one of the prerequisites for TSA results or developing TSA results is also extended calculations related to TSA, since TSA is concerning direct effects, but you can do also estimates concerning indirect effects, for example, which might be also a basis for now and forecasts. And what is also important, I think, and this is a really tourism policy issue, is of course the data concerning employment due to tourism. So what are the expectations in regards to TSA and tourism policy? So first of all, there's the question, what is the economic importance of tourism? And as I already mentioned, within TSA, the direct effects are taken into account only within TSA, so no indirect and induced effects are taken into account. Of course, there is the possibility to do additional research and investigation concerning this item. What is the economic impact of tourism-related policy measures? This is another question mainly asked by the tourism policy responsible persons. The changes, and the answer would be that changes due to political measures might not become obvious and the results might be not might be statistically insignificant. So there might be a change, of course, in the figures, but and mentioned here, this might be not significant from the statistical point of view. What is the size and development of the labor market? So far, there isn't a clear indication of the effects of tourism to several sectors related to employment, since the data availability sometimes is often weak in regards to tourism employment. Another question is, what is the economic, social, environmental return of investment in tourism facilities and events? A standardized framework investigating in this field is insofar a problem, since it's statistically not available through TSA so far. So we have some, as I mentioned before, we have a table concerning investments, so the gross fixed capital formation, but still this is a quite, let's say, an overall estimate and does not go too much into in detail. So what are the further questions concerning tourism policy and the expectations? How is tourism being financed? The problem with this financing, with this question, is that investment based on information is hardly available on national and on regional level, since the funding of tourism, and I think this is a worldwide characteristic of funding, is often spread over different institutions on a national and also on a regional and a local level. So it's difficult to get this kind of data as an overall estimate. Another question is how tourism will perform in the near future. To do some forecasting, this is possible to do some forecasting, maybe based on scenario techniques, for example. But still, you have to do a lot of assumptions, of course, in this field. And as we have learned also through the last 2 years, there's always a problem, since, for example, COVID-19 pandemic, the situation is changing quite quickly. And of course, this has an impact also on this forecasting and nowcasting. Another question would be how many new jobs and additional GDP could be created with more tourism. This sounds quite simple, and the estimates sounds quite simple, but several assumptions and restrictions have to be considered in this field, of course. And a measure of reduction of seasonality in tourism might be based on TSA. As I already mentioned, in the moment, in the most countries, we don't have sub-yearly or monthly TSA, and this would be necessary to do more investigations in regards to the seasonality and the reduction of seasonality of tourism. So what is the use of TSA for policy in times of crisis, at least from my point of view and from my experiences during the last 2 years? So first of all, TSA is providing a reliable tool for public policies and business operations, so for the tourism industry, to justify, for example, financial support for the economics sector, and in particular for those sectors which are heavily affected through the tourism losses due to COVID-19 crisis. TSA is providing a robust information and indicators on the role tourism can play and is playing in the economy. So the effects on the economy without, so what are the effects? And you can say more, what are the effects on the economy without or with less tourism, for example, to compare, for example, the pre-pandemic times. TSA is also describing the size and the economic importance of tourism before, during, and after the crisis. So with TSA figures, it's possible to benchmark before and after the crisis, so to benchmark the tourism development before and after the crisis, for example. It is providing also a detailed information on visitor consumption, as mentioned, including all forms of tourism, and it makes possible also to evaluate the most affected forms of tourism. Mainly in the most countries, it's inbound tourism, which is affected by the pandemic, and of course also the outbound part. In many countries, the domestic tourism was less affected by the pandemic. I mean, less, there is a decrease, but still it was less affected than the inbound and outbound tourism, for example. And it is including also all kind of tourism activities like same-day visitors, overnight visitors, for example, also visits to rented and non-rented accommodations or vacation homes. And you can show also with these figures which part is more or less affected due to COVID-19 pandemic. It is providing a comprehensive vision of the tourism industries and components, and so facilitates also the analysis of negative impacts of the crisis. It is linking also, as I mentioned within TSA Table 10, the economic data and other non-monetary information like physical flows. So there is also the possibility to show, for example, the tourism consumption per visitor before, during, and after the crisis, for example. There is another issue which I think is quite important, and this was also coming out during the pandemic. TSA might bring also a new recognition and confidence in tourism as one of the most important sectors of the economy. And with TSA, it's possible to show this part of economy by figures and by reliable figures to show what was before the crisis and what was after the crisis. Giving again and showing again what is really the importance for tourism for the economy. Also, tourism is giving a greater credibility to tourism statistics and to the indicators, analyzing the scale and the significance of tourism, monitoring, comparing the development, as mentioned before, during and after the crisis, and of course, receiving additional resources for research in this field. For example, in regards to forecasting, to find out what is the relation between environment and tourism, and also to find out and to investigate more concerning indicators related to tourism and sustainability. So TSA is a solid and reliable databases of research and innovative methodological approaches, such as now and forecasting. You can compare the pre-pandemic results with the most recent data available based on TSA. What is also important in regards to TSA, you can compare the figures let's say, on a worldwide level as far as countries have already implemented tourism satellite accounting. So international comparison is insofar possible as these TSA tables and TSA calculations are available. And also TSA might show the impacts on investment and support of government for tourism, such as tourism promotion, visitor information services, and so on. So providing reliable data on the effects of the crisis on the country's overall labor market is another item which is quite important. And this is important due to the fact and due to the tourism peculiarity that tourism activities are labor intensive. In most cases, tourism employs persons with low levels of qualifications. And tourism might be located in areas with little, if any, industrial developments. and employment in tourism will fluctuate seasonally. And this means that you have different employment. State of the art of employment is different from season to season. TSA might provide also stock and flows of physical investment, as already mentioned, because tourism is not possible if there is a lack of basic infrastructure, for example, and tourism depends also on a large extent of the availability of other facilities which serves resident people as well, like waste disposal mentioned here. So these were some words in regards to what is the value of TSA in regard to for the tourism policy, and showing a little bit the value of what can be done with TSA based information, taking into account the pandemic developments. And here I have some slides concerning the impacts of the pandemic on the Austrian tourism. First of all, the governments of tourism statistics in Austria. We have tourism policy, and this is a federal issue. And we have here our main partner is the Federal Ministry of Agriculture, Regions and Tourism. And tourism statistics is a federal issue, but tourism policy is a federal state level, so it's a sub-national issue. So this is due to the constitution law of Austria that tourism policy is part of the federal state level. We have developed for a TSA for the national on a national level, but we have also developed and we published this data just 1 month ago in regard to regions. So we have regional tourism satellite accounts for 8 federal state for every federal state on a federal state level. We have, as I mentioned in the beginning, TSA needs partners, needs collaboration within the statistical office, but also without with external partners, of course. So we have a contract partner; it's a research institute. We have a client by contract, the Federal Ministry. We are working together with the Austrian Tourism Board and the Austrian Central Bank. But showing here a little bit what is the development concerning or during the last 2 years, taking into account the COVID-19 developments. So we had, and now in the moment we are in the 4th lockdown, and this has, of course, a huge effect on the tourism industries. And you see here, for example, the first lockdown we had in April, so after March in April 2020. So the overnight stays, and this is a graph showing the overnight stays in rented accommodation, shows that in particular in April and in May 2020 there were nearly no arrivals and no guests available. The summer 2020 was rather good. The hotels opened in this time period between June and November. Then we had the 2nd and 3rd lockdown starting in December. So as you see here, between December and 2020 and May 21, the overnight stays and the number of overnight stays was really low. Then the hotels opened again during the summer, and the summer was rather the same. 21 was rather the same as the summer 2020. And presently we have the 4th lockdown, and also the hotels are closed in November, at least in December. And we will see what is happening in the beginning of 2022. We have done also some estimates based on TSA in regards to the developments of tourism industry between 2019 and 2020. So we did some estimates, and in fact, you see that the direct effects, but also the direct and the indirect effects. So our research institute are doing some estimates also in regards to the indirect effects. And you see that we have a loss about one third. So we have direct effects and indirect effects in billion euro by 1/3 lower than in 2019. And for 2021, we don't have any estimates and nowcasts, but as it is shown also in the last chart, we can say that the level will be rather the same, maybe in some parts less than last year. In particular, in the urban tourism, for example, we have the highest losses. So the loss will, but nevertheless, the loss will rather the same as in 2020 compared to 2019 and 2018 in the year 2021. The same is valid also for the consumption expenditure of non-residents and resident visitors. Again, you see here that we have a loss of non-resident visitors from 20 or 21 billion euro to about 12 billion euro, and also, but the resident visitors, as I mentioned before, so the domestic tourism was less affected by COVID. So we have a loss which is less than the non-resident visitors loss from 16 or 16.6 billion euros to about 14 billion euros between 2019 and 2020 concerning tourism consumption. Okay. But I have to say, concerning these estimates, it has to be taken into account, of course, then that these estimates might be or have to be, I'm nearly sure, to revise because some revisions are necessary for sure due to the COVID developments. And it has to be said that also the profile of the visitors has changed. So we have less business visitors, and we have more domestic tourists, or we have compared to the non-resident tourists. And also this means that the consumption patterns changed. And this means also a different figures in regards to the tourism consumption, of course. So this was in regards to the developments during the last 2 years in Austria, and some overviews concerning the data. Okay. So concluding, the TSA is providing a comprehensive and macroeconomic data and a decision base for national, regional tourism, and in regard to the importance compared to other economic sectors. COVID-19 pandemic could be seen also as a driver for the measurement of the impact of tourism on national and subnational level, including information on employment, but also on other effects of the crisis to the economy and to the overall labor sector. And TSA is also increasing the public acceptance and the credibility of tourism statistical data and TSA itself. And this might justify also new additional research in this field, and is also a possibility, I think, to demystify TSA for the public and the policy decision makers. And COVID-19 pandemic could be also an opportunity for intensifying and supporting closer cooperation with research and policy stakeholders. So I thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Dr. Peter Leimer, and we are very proud about your VTR. Please give a big round of applause to our speaker Dr. Peter Limer ขอเสียงปรบมือดังๆให้กับ VTR นะคะของดร. Peter Limer ค่ะและในลำดับนี้นะคะขออนุญาตกราบเรียนเชิญนะคะคุณพักทองส้มนะคะขึ้นมาในช่วงของเซสชั่นต่อไปนะคะ May I invite คุณพักทองส้มthe Officer of Excellent Business Management Company Limited to deliver the next session Q&A please. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Hello, Mr. Peter. Good.
Hello, everybody. I hope you can hear me.
Yes, it's very clear to hear from.
Okay, fine. Thank you.
Yes. Yeah. Good morning at your place, or good afternoon in Bangkok time. My name is Park Thong Som. I am a researcher team in the TSA construction in Thailand. I met you last time when you were in Bangkok, so it's really nice for us to meet you again. Even if it is a long distance meeting, it's very good for me. Yeah? We have finished your presentation that we deliver to our participants. The presentation delivered in English. And we have shown the subtitle in Thai. So I think all participants here understand clearly what you have said about the 5 topics that you have mentioned. Next is the question and answers that I think the question and answer can deliver to you in 2 ways. First, for the one who can raise your question in English, please present the question directly to Mr. Peter in English. For the one that prefer to raise question in Thai, I will try to translate your question in English. However, because I'm not a professional translator, okay, ครับขอบคุณครับ Yeah, I try to translate in English to Mr. Peter. Before go to this session, Mr. Peter, would you like to say something to all participants? Mr. Peter, would you like to say something before we start the question and answer?
Yes, please. Yes, please. So first of all, thank you very much for having the possibilities and opportunity to talk to you via the virtual line, let's say it in this way. Of course, I would appreciate, or more appreciate to be there in Bangkok. But due to COVID, it's in the moment not possible since we are still within the pandemic and not out of this pandemic. But nevertheless, I hope that I could travel again to your wonderful country in the near future. As it was in July 2018, when I was doing a presentation also, or some presentations also concerning, including also TSA. So thank you very much for this opportunity. And yes, I'm expecting the questions. If you have some, please don't hesitate to ask me about TSA and about the possibilities how to measure also the COVID problems and the COVID losses in tourism.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Okay, now it's a question. Okay, let's start first, please.
Hello, Lotus. Good afternoon, Mr. Peter. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, first of all, thank you for your presentations. It's very useful indeed. My name is Takang Sak. I'm working at the Thailand Convention and Exhibition Bureau. We are government agencies is in charge of the promoting and developing the business events in Thailand, which is the part of the tourism and services industry. Since the COVID-19 effect on the traveling conditions, so many events have changed the formats from the physical to online platform. So it's a big challenge for us to do the data collections from the international travelers, especially on their spending. So may I ask for your clear advice on this, how we can handle on these concerns, I mean the data collection in this kind of the pandemic situation. Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much for these questions. Indeed, it's a challenge to collect the data in this time of pandemic, since not too many tourists are available to have this kind of data. We are facing the same or similar problems in Austria. We have for example, we have a survey at the destinations concerning expenditure, and in the moment we have, of course, a very low number of cases, or we had low number of cases also during summer, but also during, in particular, during winter season, to take into account these figures for further investigations concerning the effects of the pandemic. What is I think also the problem with the pandemic is that we don't have too much experiences from the past, since this pandemic is, I would say, the first one after, at least in most of the countries, and it's very difficult to have to find experiences from the past concerning collection of the data. Nevertheless, of course, concerning collecting the data, I think one possibility is also to collect the data and to do some estimates based on previously data, for example. So still, I think that it's possible to make estimations concerning for example, the daily expenditure. I think there is a possibility to do so. And nevertheless, we have to take, within these estimations, I think we have to take into account also the issue that we have a change of structure of guests, of course. You mentioned there is a huge problem also concerning business tourism, and there are less business tourists, at least I know it from my city here in Vienna. They have no business tourists anymore. I must say I'm the best example in the moment for this, since normally I would stay in Bangkok, and I'm not there, and we have this virtual meeting, so they have big losses in the capitals and the big cities concerning business tourism. So this, what I want to say is that this have to be taken into account also, because this is a different kind of guests, and this is a different kind of spending of business tourists, for example. As we know, business tourists are spending more than the normal, let's say, the normal guests for recreation or for holiday reasons coming to Bangkok, for example, or to Thailand. Business tourists normally spend more. So this has to be taken into account also when you do this kind of estimates. But of course, this is a matter, of course, how to collect data when no tourists are available from whom you are able to collect this kind of data. Maybe a good publication concerning this was done by UNWTO. I think I have also the link in my presentation concerning this publication, showing a little bit the challenges and showing also some solutions how in times of COVID and pandemic the data can be collected and some estimates can be done. I think also some country experiences are included in this publication, and I think they are quite useful for the practical work.
Thank you for the excellent answer. Another question, please. No question.
Maybe I could add something.
Yes, please.
Yes. Okay. Of course, as we know all, the pandemic in the moment, the pandemic is not over and not finished. So really, the effects of the whole of the pandemic can be measured afterwards. Nobody knows really how long this pandemic would last and would affect also tourism. I'm sure, at least in the European area, the pandemic will affect also the year 2022. So really, the damage of the pandemic concerning tourism can be really shown after the COVID-19 is more or less finished. But as we all know, this will need sometimes more and sometime more, and to make a final conclusion, what was really the effect of the pandemic. Nevertheless, as I mentioned also in the presentation, I think TSA is a useful tool to measure the positive effects of tourism before COVID, and also to measure the effects during and after the pandemic. And I think you can find out of this data the effects of the pandemic, and this might be also a possibility, as mentioned also in my presentation, to justify additional support from the government due to the losses in regard to GDP share, but not only related to GDP share, but also related to overall labor. Because I think in particular, the labor market in tourism is quite affected a lot. And this causes, of course, also additional problems for the people and who are unemployed. And this has additional effects, social effects, so not only economical effects, but also social effects. So I think all in all, this overall effects of the pandemic can be really measured afterwards. And this will hopefully in the very, very near future, but let's see.
Thank you, Mr. Peter. I would like to continue from your suggestion that this might be some very small question from me that I would like to consult with you as well. Because in the case of Thailand, during the COVID period, we found some basic data that we collect it from two sources in Thailand. We collect from two sources. First one is from the primary source. We survey the tourists and tourism establishment. The second source is data from, for example, from national account, from balance of payment, something like this. During the COVID time, we found the inconsistency between the two sorts of data. For example, the GDP in 2020, it declined to some extent, But when we have a look on the employment data that we get it from labor force survey, these compiled by National Statistical Office, it show a little bit very small decrease. It's very far from decreasing in GDP. So my question is how to upgrade or how to improve the inconsistency data between these two sources, how to make a better reconciliation between various sources of data, particularly during the data during the period of COVID-19. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you for this comment and for the question concerning your data sources. Of course, there are, first of all, I would say that there, as I understood correctly, there is a difference between balance of payments statistics and the travel item, and also the tourism statistics item on the methodological and conceptual point of view. So the view concerning balance of payments is broader. So in this concept, all travelers are included, which is not the case related to tourism statistics. Of course, I don't know exactly what in your establishment survey is included. If there is only included the tourists. But not, for example, seasonal workers who are working in Thailand, for example, in the tourism field or in other fields. From the balance of payments point of view, these kind of visitors or these kind of travelers are included in the tourism concepts or tourism statistics concept. It is not included. So this is from the conceptual point of view. Of course, if you have less tourists and less cases, this might be one of the reasons why the differences between the results are during pandemic higher than, let's say, in normal times. So this might be one of the reasons. But I think it would be useful to have a look also to older data or to time series data, so back, let's say, 10 years, and to have a look if there is let's say, a systematic mistake or a systematic error between balance of payments data and your establishment data, or this is really due to the COVID or to the pandemic times, since there are less tourists available. So I can propose to compare figures from the older years or before 2020, so 2019, 2018, and compare these figures with these differences between both systems with figures during the pandemic times. So this is maybe based on this analysis, you are able to find out a little bit more about the differences.
Thank you very much. Please, we have a next question.
Hello, Mr. Loima.
Hello.
Good morning. My name is Pariyapa. I'm currently working for the Ministry of Culture. And thank you very much for your wonderful insights on how to collect data and also the data that kind of reflect the damages and the effects of COVID-19 pandemic on tourism. I think it's lucky for the tourism sector that it has at least the data and the numbers that kind of reflect the situation and have all the policymakers congregate, and then they are able to decide what to do next. But then when we look at the culture sector, for me, I'm working at the Ministry of Culture, and we are not that fortunate because in terms of culture, which is, we can see culture as something very abstract. And we have to, right now, we are working on building the data and statistics to reflect what culture really contribute to society and economy. And then when the number of the arrivals, the international arrival of tourists in Thailand are significantly decreasing, we are now seeing the real impacts, the real negative impacts on culture sector as well. And since we are, right now, we really want to know whether we can rebuild and revitalize culture sector through tourism, and we want to know if we are able to probably build the future of healthy cultural tourism. And then comes a question, is it possible to segregate or divide cultural tourism from tourism in general? What would the scope be, I mean, in terms of cultural tourism? And do you have can you give us any case of cultural tourism and the data collection, maybe from the case in Austria, in your own country? Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much for this question concerning cultural tourism. Yes, indeed. I think for tourism, it's a quite important issue and item. So not only in my country, but also in many other countries of the world. And again, TSA again is a possibility because you're asking also about segregation of cultural activities. There is also a possibility to segregate or to find out about the value of cultural activities through TSA. As you know, we have tourism characteristic industries within TSA, and we have tourism characteristic products. And one of these products and one of this industry concern the cultural industry and the cultural services. And this is also well defined in the ISIC classification. So in the industrial standard industrial classification, this is an international classification, and the statistical office should know, of course, what is included and what is not included under this item. So cultural tourism, yes, it's important. And there was also in Austria, for example, there was a huge decrease concerning cultural tourism. And cultural tourism in Austria, for example, concerns mainly, I would say mainly, the big cities, for example, also the capital of Vienna, concerning museums, concerning theaters, for example, the visiting of theaters and museums, and a huge part of visiting museums and theaters is done by tourists, by visitors within their visits in Vienna, for example. So how we measure this? We have at Statistics Austria, we have a statistics called cultural statistics. And within this cultural statistics, we have data available concerning the visitors in museums, for example, or the number of visitors in theaters. And based, of course, these numbers include visitors and resident people. But based on TSA, we are able to find out what is the share of tourism-related visitors and other visitors in museums, for example, so the resident people. So this is done by one of the tables in TSA, TSA table 6. We have this tourism ratio, And this is the comparison between supply side information and demand side information. And there you can find out what is the tourism use of this product called, for example, cultural services. So at least it gives you an estimate what is the importance of this sector for tourism. Of course, I don't know how this is structured or what is included or what would you include in Thailand in this sector. But I'm sure you have a lot of cultural sites and a lot of cultural events, for example. This is also including events, of course. And in addition, of course, you can do what is also done here in Austria. For some events, there are some special surveys concerning this or within or during these events concerning how many visitors are available in these events, for example. Of course, it does not say anything about the consumption, about the expenditure of these visitors. But still there is a possibility to do estimates concerning the expenditure. So, for example, if they stay in a hotel, of course, or after the cultural event or after the visit of a theater, then you can do some estimates based on the expenditure in hotels or the average expenditure in hotels. And of course, you know the prices of the entrances in these cultural events. So there are, let's say, there are pieces of puzzles of information available you are able to use to make at least an estimate what is the value of the cultural sector within the country.
Thank you. May I add more information about the estimation of this sector in the case of Thailand? I think the majority of the production in this sector in the case of Thailand is the entrance fee for the national park. I think it accounts more than 90% of total value of the cultural industry in the case of Thailand. Thank you. Next question, please. Any question? Okay, no question.
สอบถามเป็นภาษาไทยได้นะคะ
No? Okay, shall we finish? Okay. I think we have finished seminar today's seminar. On behalf of the Ministry of Tourism and Sports and on participants in this seminar, we would like to give a very special thanks to Mr. Peter. We have got a very valuable advice and instruction from you. This is, I think, it would support all of us to develop more about statistics and TSA in our country to be better in the future. I would like to, on this occasion, I would like to say Happy New Year to you, Mr. Peter. And finally, again, please, I would like all participants here to again applaud Mr. Peter for very excellent presentation to us. And would like to say thank you very much again and hope to see you again in the future in Bangkok. Thank you very much.
Yes.
ค่ะขอเสียงปรบมือนะคะให้กับดร. Peter Leimer ด้วยค่ะ
Thank you also very much for this having this opportunity to take part in this seminar, and I also wish you a happy new year, and hopefully we see each other in the new year lively, so not virtually but lively. Still, I'm preferring to speak lively and also to discuss the issues afterwards and during the coffee break. I'm not able to do in the moment, but let's do it in the near future. So thank you very much to you all. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, bye bye.
Bye.
ขอบคุณมากครับขอบคุณทุกท่านนะครับจะมีรายการ
ค่ะขอบคุณมากนะคะแล้วก็ขอบคุณนะคะท่านแขกผู้มีเกียรติทุกท่านนะคะรวมถึงคุณภักทองส้มนะคะสำหรับในเซสชั่นนะคะภาคบ่ายนี้นะคะขอกราบขอบพระคุณทุกท่านด้วยนะคะก่อนกลับนะคะขอความกรุณาทุกท่านค่ะช่วยสแกน QR code นะคะที่อยู่โซนด้านล่างนะคะจะเป็นการประเมินนะคะสำหรับการจัดการสัมมนาและการประชุมในครั้งนี้ค่ะท่านสามารถสแกน QR code ที่อยู่ด้านล่างนะคะของกระดาษที่อยู่ในแฟ้มเอกสารของทุกท่านด้านล่างค่ะเพื่อช่วยประเมินนะคะแล้วก็แสดงความคิดเห็นเกี่ยวกับการจัดการประชุมในครั้งต่อๆไปนะคะเพื่อการพัฒนาสิ่งต่างๆให้ดียิ่งขึ้นค่ะสำหรับการประชุมในครั้งนี้นะคะในนามของกองเศรษฐกิจการท่องเที่ยวและกีฬากระทรวงการท่องเที่ยวและกีฬาค่ะและบริษัท Excellent Business Management จำกัดนะคะขอกราบขอบพระคุณแขกผู้มีเกียรติทุกท่านนะคะวิทยากรทุกท่านเช่นกันค่ะที่ให้เกียรตินะคะมาร่วมงานในครั้งนี้ในการจัดการประชุมในครั้งนี้หากเรามีการต้อนรับหรือว่าอำนวยความสะดวกนะคะยังไม่ทั่วถึงจุดไหนประการใดต้องขอกราบขอประทานอภัยมาณที่นี้ค่ะแล้วหวังว่าโอกาสหน้าจะได้รับเกียรติจากทุกท่านในการประชุมและจัดกิจกรรมครั้งต่อๆไปสำหรับวันนี้ขอให้ทุกท่านเดินทางกลับบ้านโดยสวัสดิภาพพบกันใหม่โอกาสหน้าสวัสดีค่ะ